It all began when I moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood. I had lost my husband the year before, and this house was meant to be a fresh start. A small, two-story home with a patch of garden in front. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and after months of grief, I finally felt like I could breathe again. The neighborhood, though, came with its own challenges. The HOA, run by a woman named Karen, was infamous. She was the kind of person who believed rules applied to everyone but her. Grass too long. You'd get a fine. Left your garbage bin out an extra hour. Another fine. But her house? Overgrown hedges, peeling paint, and noisy parties. Never faced a single warning. I tried to stay quiet, keep my head down, and live peacefully. But trouble has a way of finding those who don't want it. Karen's son, Tyler, was 18, arrogant, entitled, and reckless. He'd speed through the neighborhood in his brand new car, blaring music, tossing beer cans out the window. Parents whispered about him stealing, sneaking into homes, but no one dared confront Karen. She had the HOA wrapped around her finger. One Friday night, I returned from the grocery store, arms full of bags, and noticed something strange. My front door, usually locked, was slightly open. My heart pounded. I stepped inside cautiously. And there he was. Tyler sat on my couch, shoes on my rug, flipping through my mail as if he owned the place. My breath caught. "What are you doing in my house?" I demanded. He didn't even flinch. He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Relax. Mom runs the HOA. I can do whatever I want here." The audacity left me speechless. He wasn't robbing me. He wasn't desperate. He believed he had the right to be there. That was worse. I told him to leave immediately, but instead, he stretched out like a king. "This neighborhood belongs to us," he said. "My mom says we can use empty houses whenever we want. Thought this place was free tonight." I felt anger boiling inside me. "This is not your house. Get out, untouchable." His smirk faded, replaced with defiance. He stood up, towering over me. "What are you gonna do? Call the cops. They'll laugh at you. Everyone knows my mom runs this place." That was the moment I realized. Karen and her son weren't just bullies. They believed they were untouchable. And unless someone stood up to them, they'd keep trampling over everyone else. So, with trembling hands but a steady voice, I said the words he didn't expect. "Yes. I'm calling the cops. And we'll see if they laugh." The call to 911 was the longest 2 minutes of my life. I whispered into the phone, explaining that someone had broken into my house. Tyler scoffed in the background, muttering, "You're wasting your time. They'll never arrest me." But when the sirens echoed down the street minutes later, his smirk faltered. 2 officers stepped inside. I pointed at Tyler. "I broke into my house." The cops asked him to explain himself. Tyler folded his arms and said, "It's not breaking in. My mom runs the HOA. We make the rules. This is basically our neighborhood." The officers exchanged glances. One of them sighed, then turned serious. "That's not how the law works, son. You're under arrest for unlawful entry." The sound of handcuffs clicking around his wrists was like music to my ears. For once, the arrogance was gone. He stammered, shouting for his mom. And of course, Karen came running. She barged into my yard shrieking, "You can't arrest my son! I run this HOA! Do you know who I am?" The officer turned to her calmly. "Yes, ma'am. You're someone who's about to be investigated for abuse of power. If you interfere, we'll be taking you too." For the first time, Karen fell silent. Her face turned pale, and she backed away. Tyler was taken to the station, charged with trespassing and harassment. And though he didn't stay in jail long, first-time offenders rarely do, the impact was deeper than I expected. Neighbors who had stayed quiet finally began to speak up. Stories poured out about Tyler vandalizing yards, Karen fining people unfairly, the HOA funds being misused. Within weeks, there was a petition to remove her from power. And it worked. Karen was stripped of her HOA position. She screamed, threatened lawsuits, but no one listened anymore. Her power was gone, and with it, the fear she cast over our neighborhood. As for me, That night taught me something powerful: silence only feeds bullies. Courage, no matter how small, creates change. The next time I saw my neighbors, they smiled, thanked me, and one even said, "You showed us we don't have to live in fear anymore." And maybe that was the greatest victory. Not just that Tyler faced justice, but that an entire community found its voice. Closing message C for viewers. If you've ever felt powerless against people who think they're untouchable, remember this: rules don't make someone above the law, and fear only makes them stronger. Sometimes, all it takes is one person saying, "Enough," to inspire others to stand up too. So, what would you have done if Karen's son had broken into your house? For days after Tyler's arrest, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. People, who had once avoided eye contact with me, now crossed the street to talk. I heard what happened. Mrs. Reynolds from next door said one morning, her voice trembling with relief, "You were brave. We've all been scared of Karen for years." It was strange. I had never thought of myself as brave. I was just tired. Tired of bullies taking what wasn't theirs, tired of silence. But maybe courage wasn't about being fearless. Maybe it was about being fed up enough to finally act. Karen, however, wasn't done. She stormed into my yard a few days later, her face red, her hands shaking. "You've ruined my family's reputation," she screamed. "You think you can humiliate us? You'll regret this." I stood firm. "I didn't ruin your reputation, Karen. Your son did when he broke into my house. You did when you abused your power." Her jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought she might lunge at me. But then she noticed two neighbors watching from across the street. Neighbors who once would have pretended not to see. Now they stood tall, arms crossed, glaring at her. She backed away, muttering threats under her breath. The petition to remove her as HOA president moved quickly. More and more families shared stories. The Wilsons revealed she fined them $200 for a garden hose left out, while her own lawn was littered with trash. The elderly Jenkins couple said she threatened to evict them if they didn't repaint their fence, when she hadn't painted hers in years. It was a flood of truth. Unstoppable now that someone had cracked the dam. At the final HOA meeting, Karen tried to regain control. She marched in with a folder of rules, slamming it on the table. "I am this HOA," she declared. But the room erupted, not in applause, but in shouts of frustration. "No, you're not!" someone yelled. "You've been using us for years!" I stood up, my voice shaking but clear. The HOA is supposed to protect the neighborhood, not control it. We deserve better. We deserve fairness. The vote was swift. Karen was out. A new committee was formed, made up of people who actually cared about the community, not their own power. As the meeting ended, Karen stormed past me, her son trailing behind. Tyler's arrogance was gone. His head hung low, and for the first time, he looked like what he really was, a boy who had been raised to believe the world owed him everything. I almost felt pity. Almost. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood changed. Kids played outside without fear of being yelled at. Families chatted on porches. And for the first time, people smiled when they saw me. I wasn't just the new widow down the street. I was the woman who stood up when it mattered. Late one evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sun dip behind the rooftops, Mrs. Reynolds brought me a pie. "For everything you've done," she said softly. "You reminded us that we don't have to bow to bullies. Thank you." I took a deep breath, the weight of months of tension finally lifting. My house felt like a home again. Not just walls and a roof, but a place where I belonged. And maybe that was the greatest justice of all. And message for viewers: sometimes life places us face to face with people who think power makes them untouchable, but real strength isn't in control. It's in standing up for what's right, even when your voice shakes. So I'll ask you this. What would you have done if Karen's son had walked into your living room and claimed he had the right to be there?